webinar which has been organized by Disability and Development Consortium India on poverty, hunger and disability, the missing link. We come to the main part of our webinar today, and I would like to, among the luminaries, I would like to call upon Aruna ma'am, Aruna Roy, and there's a saying in Hindi कि अरुणा जी को इंट्रोड्यूस करना सूरज को दिए दिखाना है, because she is not someone who people don't know at all. She is a very connected person to the grassroots. Aruna ji is a socio-political activist, a professor, formal civil servant, and founder of Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, National Campaign to People's Right to Information, and the School for Democracy. Very early on in her career, in 1975, she came to Tilonia in Rajasthan to work with the rural poor, the Barefoot College there, and later moved to live with the poor in a village called Devdungri in Rajsamand district in Rajasthan. She has been at the forefront of a number of campaigns for accessing constitutional rights of the poor and the marginalized. Right to information, as we know today, that is her, she has a stamp over that. Narega, employment, right to food, and many more. She was a member of the National Advisory Council and a member of the steering committee of the Open Government Partnership. Currently, she is a cabinet and council member of Progressive International and president of the National Federation of Indian Women. She was a professor of practice at McGill University, ISID, Montreal, Canada. And Aruna ma'am has been awarded with the Raman Magsaysay Award in 2000, the Nani Palkiwala Award, and the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award. She was listed as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine for 2011. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you very much for asking me to share my views. I'm really honored to be with all of you. And I want to say quite clearly that these awards have all come to the MKSS and to larger groups of people working with me. And I don't think I can claim any of these attributes as a single individual. Whatever I've done with a community of people. And some of the people who are fellow speakers have also been part of the many campaigns that I've been involved with, especially Professor Jean Drez in the Narega and food campaign and in the RTI campaign. So I really think that we, as a people, need to understand that it's community work that really delivers. Incidentally, there are individuals who participate, but it's basically the community, and its extremely important members are the ordinary people with brilliant ideas. So whatever I bring to you today is based on what the MKSS has done and of which I have been a part. So I'm really very grateful to all of you, to Venki and to Kiran, Professor Jagdish Chandra, and all of you at the DDC. May I begin by saying that today we are talking about poverty and disability. For me, these things are intrinsically interlinked. And in the time of the pandemic, poverty and disability have particularly come together as a matter of concern for all of us. Those of us who work for the rights-based framework for overcoming exclusion have always felt that we need to look at rights-based entitlements as a critical factor. I'm here because I believe in intersectional solidarity, because if we have to resolve intersectional marginalization, there is no other way out. In countries like India, poverty has continued, though growth rates have increased and sharply. I'm sure Amitabh Behr will talk about the inequality report of Oxfam when he speaks to you. This unequal distribution of additional resources has recorded a sharp increase at the margins of social exclusion. In this context, the absence of a special effort to integrate the rights of the disabled people within the rights-based framework has resulted in two parallel frameworks of their rights. It has left them with suffering from the disadvantages of poverty as well, and unable to take advantage of all the rights of the poor. This is popularly known as the K graph, where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. This effort of mine talk to you today uses the example of India to show how important it is to recognize that the special rights of the disabled people lie within the general framework of rights that would help fight or overcome poverty. We will very quickly and briefly look at it through the intersection of three rights for the poor: rations, which is food; Manrega, which is employment; and social security pensions. Amongst the right to employment, food, and social security pensions, two are covered by national rights-based legislations, but social security pensions is not covered by a law and has a special category for disability pensions, which is therefore not justiciable. As a consequence, the numbers covered are extremely low, and the amount being paid has nominally been the same for 15 years and therefore has a diminishing value. In Rajasthan, we campaigned for universal pensions, and as a result of that, total number of pensioners went up from 14 lakhs, which is 1.4 million, to 58 lakhs, which is 5.8 million in 2013. Currently, there are 98 lakhs, that is 9.8 million, and their pension amounts are much higher. The government of India has not fulfilled its duty wherever the figures of pensions under the disability schemes are higher, are provided by the state duties under their state disability scheme. I quote that in Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, the disability pensions are higher because of state interaction and state intervention. The norms of selection of beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act mandates auto-inclusion of all social security pensioners. But in Rajasthan, a reported 4 lakh families have been left out of the NFSA list. Those who do not receive 2 kilo wheat, rice, 5 kilos per pension during the pandemic could be the difference between, for those who receive the 2 kilo wheat or rice per person, it is a matter of life and death to receive these 10 kilos during the pandemic. Under the MGNREGA, which gives a guarantee of 100 days of work per family, the average for pensions with disabilities has been much lower than the general average. The government of Rajasthan announced an additional 100 days of work for families with people with disabilities. While this could have been critically important, sustained support to pull a family out of poverty, the implementation has been very poor. Even complying with 100 days guaranteed work has been difficult, but the 200 days announced have therefore become quite meaningless. In this context, a campaign for complete inclusion with universal rights and few exceptions is critical and necessary. A campaign for the meaningful implementation of special rights for the disabled people, such as automatic inclusion in welfare schemes, needs to be taken up as well. The inclusion of disabled people under the purview of rights-based legislations will provide them access as well as reprieve. Inclusion in welfare and social security schemes like the NGNREGA, the PDS and pension schemes is very important to create a social security net for all vulnerable groups. Creating special provisions for the disabled people in these social security programs will therefore reinforce the constitutional right of the disabled people of equality and justice as prescribed under the chapter on fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. From our experience in Rajasthan and working with the poor and marginalized, we realize that, that if the varied vulnerabilities intersect, for example, old age, intersects with disability, intersects with poverty and caste, Dalits and other communities, a special group emerges of people who cannot access any of their rights. special provisions need to be made. For instance, like the 200 days work in MGNREGA, but they also have to be made implementable. We need special campaigns to ensure access and delivery. It is only when inclusion gets accepted as a right of the disabled people, upheld by Article 14 equality and Article 38, which is the directive principles of state policy, will there be a real solution. The only way to ensure the well-being of everyone is to ensure that no one is absolutely left behind. This is where intersectional solidarity makes a huge difference. I want to emphasize that this solidarity is made up of a rainbow coalition of marginalized people and communities. I remember once when we got together in Delhi, whistleblowers and grievance redress, asking for whistleblowers law, for grievance redress law, a street vendors law, an amendment to the Act on People with Disabilities, and the amendment to this SC/ST Atrocities Act. We all realized that campaigning together strengthens each campaign as well. When the people with disabilities led the march with their evolved protest methods, we managed to force entry to debarred places like Vijay Chowk in India Gate in Delhi. The hearing impaired said they couldn't hear and asked the police, who were announcing 144 and asking us to move back, demanded sign language, and also asked for wheelchairs to climb into the police van, which was dogging our footsteps. It was impossible for the police to deal with it, and therefore they made room for all the other campaigns to move in, and we stood there in solidarity. I therefore believe that people with disabilities are actually the people with disabilities can forge a way of campaigning and protest to help others. All campaigns for equality have to now contend with the attack on constitutional principles of equality of justice and all other guarantees. As Venki mentioned, all campaigns, no matter what their composition, have to now bring in a concern for keeping the Constitution alive, for a call for equality and justice, for the fundamental right to freedom of expression, of protest and dissent, and a secular equal India. Both values are being eroded by new laws and social approval for economic inequality and violence and hate, especially amongst minorities. The state stands a silent witness. The state has abrogated its duty and obligation to help economically and socially with the people at the margins. It's something that we have to remember, no matter which campaign we are part of, that these demands are the bottom line for each one of us. I am sure that the speakers, who are much more erudite than I am, will follow me. Raw will push the economic agenda, and Amitabh will talk about the Oxfam report, and I leave it to all of you to discuss this further and to take it to a conclusion where we all stand together for equal rights for the poor, the marginalized, the discriminated, and the disabled. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aruna ma'am. Thank you very much for your thoughts and what you mentioned about absence of special efforts to include people with disabilities on the various framework, the development framework or the framework of rights-based framework, that many of our participants have echoed that in the chat box.